Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Gathering of the Wicked. This was sent to me by Asmodee, and is designed by Philippe de Pallier and Hervé Marly. In a world where everyone is wicked, is there anyone you can really trust? Play as your favorite Disney villain or henchman character. Will you be a member of Team Mayhem or cause chaos as a member of Team Mischief? This is a reskin, or not just reskin, but it's a version of Werewolves of Miller's Hollow, if you've played that, just with Disney villain iconic characters and some new roles. So, yeah, let me show you how to play. So, Gathering of the Wicked is a werewolf game where you are either on Team Mayhem or Team Mischief. If you are on Team Mischief with one of these cards, you are trying to remain hidden and vanquish members of Team Mayhem. Whereas if you have one of these cards, you are Team Mayhem and you're trying to vanquish and find the members of Team Mischief. One thing that I thought wasn't a great idea is that they both start with M and they both mean Mayhem and Mischief, kind of similar things. So people got really confused. So I just had to go with yellow and purple while playing, because it's just, those are just too similar. Anyway, minor complaint. But during the game, you'll play as a Disney villain or Disney henchman, and you get a secret random team alignment depending on how many players there are in the game. So Mischiefs, during the nighttime phase, you pick a player from Team Mayhem secretly to vanquish. During the day, they hide their identity to avoid retaliation. The number of Mischief players can range from 1 to 3, depending on how many you have in your player count. Meanwhile, for Mayhem, during the day, you all wake up and try to deduce and work out who the members of Team Mischief are within the gathering and try to vanquish them. Now, in the game, there are villains and henchmen. For example, there's the Queen of Hearts and the King of Hearts. The King of Hearts is the henchman of the Queen of Hearts. And one rule that this game has is that if a henchman votes against their villain, and if the villain is vanquished but found to be a member of Team Mayhem, then they die too. So, if you vote wrong, if it turns out your villain was innocent but you voted against them, you are also eliminated. And with the exception of Diablo, which I'll get into in a second, the henchmen have no other special skills. They are just connected to their villains. If you've never played Werewolf before, it's always divided into a nighttime phase and a daytime phase. We'll kind of go through that later. At nighttime, everybody closes their eyes. A narrator will read out loud what each character does in order. And then after everything is done, everybody wakes up. And in the daytime phase, you try to figure out who the guilty parties are. Now, Maleficent, what she can do every night, she picks a player whose secret alignment is revealed secretly to Diablo. Diablo will then pass that information to Maleficent, but Diablo can lie, because if Diablo is one of the bad guys, well, I guess badder guys in this case, Mischief, they can try to trick Maleficent. You'll see how that works later. If either member of the pair is vanquished, then they lose the power. But yeah, every night, Maleficent can spy on a player's alignment card. Prince John has the henchman Sir Hiss, and what his power is he begins the game with a crown card. Whoever has the crown is the one who makes the final decision if an elimination vote is tied. If Prince John is vanquished, then they designate a successor and pass the crown on to them. There's a similar role in other werewolf games, usually like a leader of some kind. The Queen of Hearts, if we go back to her, once per game during the daytime phase, the Queen of Hearts can settle debates by accusing one specific player of betrayal. They point to that player and announce, "Off with their head!" Players will then immediately vote to either save or vanquish that specific player for the round. The accused player is not allowed to vote. Once they are accused, the Queen of Hearts cannot change their vote, and then that basically replaces that day's normal vote. So Queen of Hearts can be like, let's vote for them. And immediately you have to decide. Once per game. Mother Gothel has the henchmen, the Stabbington brothers, and what her power is every night Mother Gothel picks a player to lock away, including themselves. That night, if the player locked away is chosen by the members of Team Mischief, they cannot be vanquished. However, Mother Gothel cannot pick the same player 2 nights in a row, including herself. Captain Hook has the henchman Smee, and what Captain Hook's power is is at the start of each day, Captain Hook will temporarily hold one of the players prisoner by giving them the rope card and takes that character prisoner. If Captain Hook is vanquished by the vote, his prisoner will be vanquished too. So, members of Team Mayhem, they got to be sure if they really want to vanquish him. Because if they're wrong, they could also potentially, well, even if they're right, they could still potentially lose one or two members of their own team. Hades has the henchman Pain and Panic, and what Hades' power is once per game, he can choose to save a player who was selected to be vanquished by Team Mischief. He can use his power for his own benefit and save himself as well, if chosen. And that's once per game. The Queen has the minion, the Magic Mirror, and what the Queen's power is once per game, the Queen can choose to unveil the secret identity of another player by revealing the player's alignment card to the group. If they are a member of Team Mischief, that player is instantly vanquished. Otherwise, you can see, oh, that person is innocent for the rest of the game, which is pretty handy. And that's a once per game ability as well. Lady Tremaine has no power per se, but she has two henchmen, Drizella and Anastasia. So there are two people that if they vote against you and they're wrong, they will die. So she has some extra security almost. Shere Khan has no henchmen, but whenever Shere Khan votes against another player, that player receives a claw mark. And what claw marks do is they receive an additional vote against them for every claw mark they have. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and you can target people who you think might be guilty. Now, to set up the game, it depends on how many players you have. They have a chart here that also advises you on which cards to use. But for 6 players, you use 1 mischief card, 7 to 11 is 2, and 12 is 3 mischief cards. And then you can choose and swap which Disney and henchman you want to use. Then during the game, so basically each player gets one of these face down alignment cards and a roll. Then during the nighttime phase, the narrator, you actually reads it straight from the book. It tells you everything you need to read. Anything in bold, in order with the characters that are in the game and alive. So it might be, okay, first, nighttime, all players close their eyes and go to sleep. Then Maleficent, wake up and choose a player whose alignment they want to have revealed. It goes through every single character's steps very clearly. So nobody has to memorize anything because it said very clearly what you're supposed to do. Like Maleficent wakes up and Diablo reveals the alignment of the chosen player. And the narrator just has to read all the bold text, and you follow the directions. So that stuff is pretty clear. Then, once all of the nighttime rolls happen and a player is chosen to be vanquished, everybody wakes up, the narrator reveals who was vanquished and reveals their card, and then the players have to discuss afterwards. And then there are some daytime rolls, like Captain Hook takes a prisoner and such. But yeah, basically at that point, everyone has to vote for a player to vanquish. And if you're on Team, God, even I keep forgetting, Team Mayhem, you are trying to find the members of Team Mischief. And if you're on Team Mischief, you're trying to blend in and not get caught. You keep playing until if Team Mayhem kills all members of Team Mischief, they win. Or if the number of members of Team Mischief is equal or greater than number of members of Team Mayhem, then Team Mischief wins. Otherwise it's just kind of classic werewolf with different roles, and that's the game.
So first off, while I have played the original Werewolves of Miller's Hollow, I know there are like a million bajillion extra roles and expansions and stuff, and there's also plenty of other werewolf games, so I don't know offhand which ones in this game are completely brand new, or if there are any brand new ones. I don't know. But I think this version was decently fun, although for me personally, any version of classic werewolf is always going to have the problem that I have with it. Mainly that early player elimination sucks. It just sucks. And I know that, if you're going to play werewolf, you just have to accept that. But if you're the first player chosen first to die, you just gotta sit and watch. I don't like that. It's why I still prefer One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which I have previously reviewed. And that's always gonna be the best version of werewolf for me. With that said, let's get into this one. Before I get into that, another thing I is that with this game, you really need a big group of people to maximize the enjoyment, which can be tricky to wrangle. It can be tricky to get like 10, 12 people to maximize the enjoyment, because one of you also has to be the narrator, which I don't like, because, you know, One Night Ultimate Werewolf has an app. This really needs like an app or something to run it. Otherwise, you basically have to find a narrator and then 10 players or whatever. That's a lot to ask for. But that's my personal opinion. But let's get into this version of the game. The Henchman Rule is interesting. It does add an element of risk for voting against your master, but I do think it makes the game uneven, because if you're a henchman, you're at a very severe disadvantage from the get-go. Getting like regular villager in Werewolf sucks already because you don't have a cool role. This is just a version of that where not only do you not have a cool role, but you can't vote against someone without almost dying. It just, hey, want to be a worse villager? That's essentially how the henchman is. Whenever I play Werewolf or a version of Werewolf, eventually I try to phase out as many villagers as possible so that everybody has some kind of interesting role to play. In this version, half of you are just shitty villagers, and it doesn't really, I don't get it. It just doesn't really work that well. Now, I appreciate the theming of the roles, and there are some fun ones. You know, I like the, you know, especially if you're a fan of the movies, you know, they're thematic and cute. But some of them are a little blah, like Prince John is just kind of standard. Okay, you get to break ties or whatever. Others, like Hades, if you choose to save yourself as Hades, then you prove that you're innocent. Because Team Mischief can't choose members of Team Mischief in the rules. So there are a lot of roles or situations where you just go, oh, well, we know that person's definitely good for the rest of the game. So it makes the deduction a little too simple. Like, I know there are roles like that in other Werewolf games. I have the same problem in those games. I think it's already harder for Team Mischief to, or like the werewolves to win in these kinds of scenarios because they're outnumbered. So having these situations where like, oh, Hades saved himself, so we know he has to be innocent because he was targeted by the Mischief members, it just feels a little like unnecessary. Overall though, it's not a bad version of Werewolf. If you're not a Disney fan, just go with the original. I don't think there's anything here that's gonna make this version better. But if you like Disney and you like Werewolf, this is cute. It offers some fun variations and roles, and the theming is pretty solid. I'm not so sure about the henchman mechanic. I don't think that really works, but other than that, it's just a fun Disney version of Werewolf, and you know if you're the target audience for this. And I think it's actually pretty fun for that.